Hello and welcome to another Brawl video. Today we're checking out this blue, black and green, or Sultai colored Voltron deck as it's called. That's going to try and go all in on its commander, suiting it up with various equipment, enchantments and mutate creatures, as we're playing with a 4 mana 2/1 indestructible commander that says whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we get to exile the top X cards of their library, where X is the amount of damage dealt, and then we get to cast any number of spells with mana value X or less from among them without paying their mana cost. So our plan is simple: try and get Kotis in play as soon as possible and then start suiting it up so we can also increase its power, so we get to exile more and more cards with the ability, and then hopefully the opponent's cards will take care of the rest. So then taking a look at our deck breakdown, I've split it up into a few different categories, starting with a little bit of mana acceleration, mostly 1 and 2 mana ramp cards, so we can hopefully play Kotis on turn 3. Then we get to the equipment, which is the largest section in this deck, and there's a lot of ways to increase Kotis' power that way, as well as just giving it lots of useful keywords, additional protection effects like hexproof and ward, or literal protection from some of our swords can also help us attack past opposing blockers. Trample's also very useful for that, and then double strike is also awesome if we can enable Kotis' ability multiple times in a single attack step. Then we've got our mutate creatures, since these are also very synergistic with an indestructible non-human that we can mutate onto, and then most of these have a lot of extra power, so we can turn our 2/1 into maybe a 6/6 trampler, which can also help enable its ability. Then we've got a few auras as well, which also play well with this playstyle, and then these include effects to make our commander unblockable, so we don't need to worry about opposing creatures getting in the way. Then we've got our generic blue and black interaction, which includes a few discard spells, mostly to take away opposing counter spells or some of the other answers that there might be for our indestructible commander. We've got some of our own counter spells, as well as some spot removal to round things out. And then finally, the miscellaneous section has a bit more protection, as well as ways to tutor up a specific artifact, which can be helpful in finding the perfect equipment for a certain situation. So that's our deck in a nutshell. Now for the deep dive, starting with our mana acceleration. Both Chrome Mox and Dark Ritual can lead to some very explosive starts. Got some mana elves like Birds of Paradise, Halfling can make our commander uncounterable, and then Elvish Mystic and Lenor Elves, and I'm also including a Gilded Goose. Then we've got Utopia Sprawl, which does need a forest, but we've got plenty of fetch lands to find them. Bloom Tender can maybe make 3 mana with our commander in play. And then Explore and Growth Spiral can draw a card and put an extra land in play. Arcane Signet and Iron Crag also can tap for mana right away. Iron Crag also later turning into an equipment, which can also help increase Kotis' power. Then our other equipment include Basilisk Collar for Deathtouch and Lifelink. The Dragonfire Blade is very synergistic, as we can equip it for just 1 mana, giving +2/+2, as well as hexproof from a monocolored. We've got Eater of Virtue giving 2 extra power. A Lava Spur Boots giving 1 extra power, haste, and ward 1. Shadow Spear giving +1/+1, trample, and lifelink. We've got Black Blade Reforged giving +1/+1 for each land we control. The Swiftfoot Boots giving hexproof and haste. Anduril gives +3/+1, as well as summoning a pair of tapped and attacking 1/1 spirit tokens with flying when our commander attacks with it. There's Fire Shrieker giving double strike, and then we've got 2 of the classic swords, Sword of Fire and Eyes giving pro blue and pro red, giving +2/+2 as well, and if we connect we not only draw a card but also get to deal 2 damage to any target. And then a Forge and Frontier gives +2/+2 as well, pro red and pro green this time, and then if we connect we get to exile the top 2 cards, play those, as well as play an additional land this turn. So these are, in my opinion, the best ones on Arena at the moment. Would have loved a Sword of War and Peace, for instance, since protection from white especially is very helpful against all the exile effects that might be out there, and then War and Peace is just a pretty powerful card in and of itself, but any of the white protection swords would have been a nice addition here. And then we also have Sword of Vengeance giving +2 power, First Rank Vigilance, Trample, and Haste. Pact Weapon can prevent us from losing the game as long as we can keep our equipped creature alive, as well as providing extra card advantage and increasing power. Leyline Axe especially powerful if it starts out in our opening hand, giving +1/+1, double strike, and trample. And then the Aether Spark is also at its best in this strategy, as we can easily suit up our commander and then start increasing its loyalty, giving us either +1 counters, extra cards, or potentially additional mana if we -10. Then our mutate creatures start out at 4 mana with a Dirge Bat, although we're often going to want to mutate it for 6 mana, destroying opposing creatures in the process. Gemraiser, an answer to artifacts and enchantments. The Great Horn helps us ramp. There's the Heron, giving our creature flying as well. The Shore Shark can bounce opposing creatures. Sterix can put additional permanents on the battlefield. Brockos turns our commander into a 6/6 trampler, so it can immediately connect and find a ton of extra cards. The Harvester makes the opponent sacrifice a creature, and then the Demolisher, another 6/6 trampling mutator that can also blow up opposing non-creature permanents, giving the opponent a 3/3 beast in return. And then our auras include multiple unblockable effects with Aqueous Form, as well as Aether Tunnel and Security Bypass. We've got Audacity for 2 additional power and trample. Combat Research, as long as our commander hasn't been mutated onto and remains legendary, also gives it +1/+1 and Ward 1, and when it connects we get to draw a card. And then there's Alpha Authority for additional protection, giving our creature hexproof, so it's also safe from potential exile effects, and then it cannot be blocked by more than 1 creature, also helpful. And then our interaction starts out with a few discard spells, Duress, Inquisition, and Thoughtseize. We've got some spot removal with Fatal Push, Bitter Triumph, and Shieldred's Edict, also good in the mirror match. And then some counter spells, starting with Wash Away to counter opposing commanders for 1 mana. Then we've got Memory Lapse as well as Mana Drain, which is pretty good in a deck with all these colorless equipment that we can cast with the extra mana we get. And then a Pact of Negation is mostly a defensive counterspell that we can keep up after deploying our commander, and as long as we have 5 mana to pay for it, we'll be fine. And then we also have Cyclonic Rift, which can be overloaded to bounce all the opponent's stuff back. And then finally our miscellaneous section includes Brainstorm for a bit of card selection, plays well with our fetch lanes. Then we've got a Snakeskin Veil for additional hexproof at instant speed. Ivy plays very well with all the mutate creatures and some of the auras we have, as we can get double the benefit. And then both Fabricate and Trophy Mage can help find various equipment. Trophy Mage is restricted to artifacts with mana value 3. Fabricate's a bit more flexible, so can find our other artifacts as well. And then the mana base is mostly just mana fixing, very few utility lands outside of Odawara and Boseiju, so mostly just dual lands for mana fixing, fetch lands to get them, and then the Surveil lands can also be searched up to give us a little bit of extra card selection throughout. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play facing Jetmir, so a Naya tokens deck that's going to go wide and then present lethal very quickly. So probably not the best matchup for this deck, but what do we think of our opener? Seems fine. Of course, white can also have ways to exile our indestructible commander, so having Inquisition to maybe take those away is important too. And then we're still hoping for a way to grant our commander some form of evasion, whether it's trample or just making it unblockable, so we can get past opposing tokens that would otherwise chump it. Alright, Carrot Cake versus Mystic. I'll take the Mystic. Even though Carrot Cake can present some blockers. And then Parallel Lives can double their tokens. Opponent Surveils. And Utopia Sprawl's a good pickup. Although since I fetched the swamp now I can't quite deploy it. I think I'll get a breeding pool. Since I might end up needing double blue at some point. So now I could fetch Forest, I suppose, and then first play Utopia Sprawl and then Kotis. And it's always good to have Utopia Sprawl on a basic land, so it's less likely to get removed. And then next turn we've got a few ways to suit up our commander. Iron Crag is probably happy to keep making mana, even though turning it into an equipment is very relevant in this deck. Opponent passes, planning to sack the Carrot Cake, no doubt. So we could play it safe and just go for the boots so we have hexproof. Although I think we need to plan for a reality where the opponent's making a ton of tokens and we have trouble getting through. So then Aether Spark is maybe the better play now, as we can eventually work our way up towards the -5. So we can draw some cards. So we'll attack, opponent's most likely jumping. I'm not sure if they meant to scry before we attack, but they could have kind of manipulated the top of their deck to affect Kotis' trigger, but yeah, if they're jumping it doesn't matter. Alright, so we've got 8 loyalty, and then next turn I could draw 2 cards already. Enduring Courage is next, can also chump block. And Ivy, great with mutates. But let's see if we can find something else. Not quite. Alright, in that case, giving double strike, maybe not quite as relevant, because we're only going to get the first strike hit to improve the Aetherspark's loyalty. So it doesn't really double that effect. So I suppose we can start by attacking, and then play Ivy and some equipment second main. Probably want to end up with the boots on Kotis itself. So our opponent jumps, we get some more loyalty, so next turn I can draw again. And we can prep the Fire Shrieker. So if I go Ivy, I'll be a little short of boots equip. So just to play it safe, we'll try this. Alright, so if we do find a mutate card, Ivy can double dip. There's some auras as well. And our opponent is on the back foot, having to keep back blockers for Kotis at all times. Now the Ocelots can help them make more tokens. Especially with the haste from Courage, that's a very good draw. Alright, so let's draw 2 again. Still nothing. Alright, I guess I could start attacking with a double striking Ivy, or I might want to keep that one back to stop the Ocelots from connecting, and then for now just attack as is. Kind of tempted to turn Iron Crag into an equipment now. And then want to give double strike to Ivy. Should have probably tapped this for mana before I transformed it. But that's alright. Just means I won't have Snakeskin Veil available. Fanatic can immediately make mana. And there's Jetmir. Alright, so I can block Ocelots. Take 10. Halfling the draw. So can't quite draw now with Aetherspark, but I can attack and then draw afterwards. Opponent's probably jumping with the cat again. So then I guess I could move the Fire Shrieker, but again it doesn't accomplish much. I think I move Everflame just to get more loyalty on Aetherspark, and then we might just move it back. But yeah, if our opponent's got a token maker left in hand, so we could be in serious trouble. Alright, Gemraiser can blow up the Enduring Courage, so that's a very nice pickup. And then with Ivy we get to mutate twice. So, yeah, let's go for it. So now we've got Trample going forward. And I can play Halfling, keep up Snakeskin Veil. And then there's probably no need to move anything else. So next turn we get a huge hit in with double strike. Just need to survive this attack. So opponents cast Parallel Lives. Would have been nice to blow up with a Gem Razor as well. Still 5 mana. And yes, Season of the Burrow, we can Snakeskin Veil. Opponent still makes a bunch of rabbits. But I guess never mind, because Season only had 1 target and we fizzled it. Now they don't even get the rabbit tokens. So that was a blowout, and yeah, our opponent scoops it up. Sadly, don't get to attack. But next turn we can have a look at the math. So Black Blade is 5 mana total to equip our commander, and then I can move Fire Shrieker as well. How many lands do we have here? 7. So we get plus 7 power, so 15 power double strike. So we get to look at 30 cards to find pretty much whatever we want and cast it for free. So yeah, that's a likely game over. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Feather, so a deck playing lots of pump spells. Birds of Paradise into Gross Spiral is a good starting point. We'll need to draw a few more lands, but we can try. Can always get a mana-producing artifact with Fabricates. And then Broncos making Kotis a 6/6 Trampler is pretty decent. And does the birds survive? So far, so good. Alright, so I think we just pass with Growth Spiral / Memory Lapse, can cast both. But if I don't need to Memory Lapse, I can maybe fetch a Surveil land. Alright, so let's Spiral, see what we find. And then I can fetch Island here and cast Memory Lapse. They can put it back on top and try again next turn. In the meantime, we get to deploy a Kotis. Skrell resolves. Thoughtseize, an interesting draw. Well, I guess I can start there. Opponent's got a couple pump spells. Yeah, the Endures is probably worth taking. And then tap out for our commander. I could Pact of Negation Feather, so it never hits the battlefield in the first place. Probably go Overgrown Tomb, so we have double black. Although I guess if the birds lives, we have double black sorted. So yeah, I could Pact of Negation Feather, just to delay it a little bit more. But then I wouldn't be able to mutate Broncos next turn, which I think is worthwhile. And we should be able to outrace Feather. Fabricate can maybe get us a nice equipment. So this can give their creature 2 extra power and lifelink until end of turn. But we're gonna have a 6/6 indestructible Trampler. Opponent takes it, and we get to dig 6 cards deep. Finding Infuriate and Ragavan. I'll take the Monkey, Infuriate. I think we just leave in exile, since there's no real benefit to casting it. And our opponent might be able to get it back out of the graveyard. Alright, so we go to Ragavan. Could have been better, could have been worse. Legionnaire resolves. And I think we let the Feather trigger happen. Gotta keep Pact for emergencies. Even though the lifelink makes it a little difficult to outrace. Savior is next. Alright, let's surveil. Yeah, sort of regretting getting the shock lands and taking 2 extra damage. Duress, I guess, is decent, although our opponent would just cast it in response, and then what happens? Then it gets exiled. Next end step goes back. So yeah, that doesn't really help me. They probably want to cast it on the Legionnaire anyways, just to trigger it. Boseiju doesn't do much either, so I can fabricate and then have 4 mana to work with. Is there anything that gives us a reach or flying? I guess Pact Weapon is a good one to get, so we don't lose the game. Yeah, I think that might be the pick, or we could go for Collar for lifelink, just trying to outrace the opponent's stuff. But when we have a Pact of Negation, I guess never mind, I'll have to ditch the Pact unless Ragavan connects and makes a treasure. I think I still take Pact Weapon. And then I don't have to suit it up now, in the hopes of getting to keep Pact of Negation in hand if we find a mana artifact or if Ragavan makes a treasure. Although I suspect our opponent will be blocking with the Savior. Alright, never mind, so now we get a treasure. So I can keep my Pact of Negation in hand. It's a double Pact. And a Mox Amber, also very useful. So, let's see here. Found a Signet, a Giver of Runes. This doesn't do anything useful. Monstrous Rage can give our creature a monster roll token. So I guess we keep growing Broncos over Ragavan. And yeah, I guess we'll untap my creatures as well. Alright. That all happens. Play Mox Amber of Ragavan. Play Pact Weapon. Equip discarding Boseiju. And then now we have a Giver of Runes to further protect Broncos. So then there's not too many ways for the opponent's deck to remove my creature and interact. Opponent's fighting the good fight. Block Legionnaire. Alright. Opponent's pumps Feather. And a Dreadmaw's Ire. Ooh, that can help them destroy my Pact Weapon. So I probably have to Pact of Negation that now. Alright, fair enough. So in that very brief window where they needed an answer, they actually found it, but good thing we still had our Pact in hand. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Tiamat's 5-color dragons. So we need to be off to a quick start, and yeah, with a Leyline Axe and a Birds, we could certainly get there. So, a powerful opening hand. I'm hoping the Tiamat build isn't just 5-color good stuff with a bunch of counter spells, which could otherwise stop Kotis. Won't quite have hexproof, but we can stack the ward triggers with boots and research. So even if they do have some sort of removal spell that exiles, it will cost them a bit more mana. So turn 1 fetch Breeding Pool, so we have double blue. And play Birds. Then turn 2, play tapped Hedge Maze, can boots equip onto the Birds for now. And Black Blade. Do we need that? What we currently don't have is a form of evasion, outside of, I guess, once we equip the Leyline Axe for Trample. So Blackblade could be a fine addition, I suppose. Although probably won't be getting around to casting it until later. Alright, so unless they have a wash away here, this should resolve. And then next turn we can maybe equip the Leyline Axe already. And Growth Spiral into a tap land. Alright, so Coast is clear. And yeah, let's just move all in. And see what we can find. Look at the top 5 cards twice, looking for any spells with mana value 5 or less that we can cast for free. And how about a Time Warp? Well, that's pretty busted, and yeah, our opponent has seen enough. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing the 5-color Shrine deck. Our hand is lacking, maybe in ways to enhance our commander. And we don't have any ramp. But I do have a Brainstorm with a fetch lane, so I get to look for those cards. So I'll keep. And I could Brainstorm turn 1. And then just shuffle 1 card away. That seems fine, just to keep up memory lapse next turn. Alright, so did not find what we really wanted. I'm okay shuffling 1 land back. And then I don't think I play Boots, just keep up memory lapse. Nessian Wanderer is not a huge threat, so we can probably let that slide. And then now I can end of turn fetch and get a Surveil land instead. So we get to maybe find something useful. Alpha Authority, I actually don't mind, since a 5-color enchantment deck is going to have ways of exiling our commander, which gets around indestructible. The only issue is it still doesn't help beef it up, but I think I do keep it. And then I can play Boots, keep up a Memory Lapse and Cyclonic Rift once again. So I don't know if I really want to play Kotis here. Sithis, we can Memory Lapse. So at least they're not drawing a bunch of cards right away. Ooh, Dark Ritual. Is that what we needed? A Ritual... Then I still need blue, green, green. Yeah, that works. So then I get to... Well, I guess I could also Lava Spur Boots Kotis to steal the opponent's Sithis. Maybe that's better than suiting up Alpha Authority, which was what I had in mind. Yeah, so we could Alpha Authority. I think that's safer than just trying to steal Sithis, although... As I mentioned, we might struggle to get past the opponent's stuff. So very tempting. Yeah, I think I still go for it. The fact that we have an enchantment to immediately trigger Sithis makes it worthwhile. And we're also denying the opponent their own card draw engine. But yeah, we could lose Kotis here. Nope, opponent taps out for their commander. Fire Shrieker is nice, but opponents at the moment just going to be chumping with their 1/1s and 1/3s. So I think Aether Spark, get this up to 4 power, at least attacks past the Life's Origin. Even though that's another turn, we're not giving it hexproof. And yeah, opponent's probably happy to chump. At least our Aether Spark also gets a bunch of extra loyalty. So we'll see what happens. There's Calyx, that's a scary card once it gets going. Especially when paired with enchantment removal. Alright, so we get to untap. So, do we draw with the Aether Spark here? It seems okay. Could also make mana to set up an overloaded Cyclonic Rift. Rogue's Passage now also a decent pickup to make our commander unblockable. Although, still tempted to just attack and maybe let them chump. They'll be chumping with a Wanderer. And then I can keep up Cyclonic Rift just for Calyx as well. Didn't think I need to equip the Fire Shrieker. So we'll see what happens. Opponent chumps. So then now I could play Fire Shrieker, just not equip it yet, keep up Rifts. And pass. They could also start activating their commander to get enchantments back from the graveyard. But currently there's no enchantments in there. Yeah, possible that playing Alpha Authority over Fire Shrieker just to protect Kotis was worthwhile. Get to draw off Sithis. Enchantress's Presence resolves. Trigger Calyx. Calyx wants to attack to maybe copy the Enchantress's Presence. Could let it slide and try and set up an overloaded Cyclonic Rift, although that's going to take me 2 more turns to set up. I think that's still reasonable. Could also chump, and then our opponent doesn't get to copy the Presence. Sure. Because at the moment we're sort of forcing the opponent to chump with our commander. And then I get to surveil. Alright, that can destroy a creature. So that's pretty good. 6 mana, however, so it is a little pricey. But it ensures that I can fly over with Kotis as well, so we could blow up Calyx and then just fly over their commander. Seems worthwhile. Alternatively, could also bounce their commander, equip Fire Shrieker to get the maximum Kotis value. And then I'll attack. And then we still haven't activated Aether Spark. Alright, that's a swing and a miss. And then I could make a whole bunch of mana, including blue for Cyclonic Rift Overload. Or I could just suit up my commander with the Alpha Authority and all my equipment, pretty much. So it's nice and safe. So we're going all in on one creature. Hopefully there's no edict effects. At least we exiled Farewell, which could have been a solution. So our creatures got hexproof twice. And now with Double Strike, we can see a lot of cards. Aether Spark happy to just put an extra +1 counter on our creature as well, just using the +1. Okay, casualties. Got rid of both of our hexproof effects and a land. So, yeah, I guess that worked out. We also lost our Planeswalker, however, so that was pretty brutal. Opponent got 4 permanents with it, but I think we'll survive. Eat our Virtue. So now we get to look at 14 cards. And how about a Thoughtseize? And yeah, our opponent has seen enough already after just the first strike damage. Sweet, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, facing an Amalia life gain deck with Lurrus as companion as well. So a low curve deck. Our hand is somewhat questionable. We're missing a little bit of mana acceleration since we're not mutating Great Horn until we already play Kotis. Do have a way to make our creature unblockable, which helps. The main concern is our opponent having ways to exile our commander or make us sacrifice it, which can get around indestructible. So I'll take a mulligan. Alright, this is better, even though I don't get to play Elvish Mystic turn 1. So I'll play a Cemetery, and then next turn I can play the Mystic. Amalia triggers off Case. Alright, so we've got some good enchantments as well now. My lands are entering tapped, sadly, so don't get to also Thoughtseize. So next turn I have to reevaluate if I want to Thoughtseize before committing my commander. Sanctifier will give them even more triggers. And they explored an epic downfall on top. Yeah, that's actually the perfect answer to Kotis, since it can exile a creature with mana value 3 or greater. So we probably want to keep up protection for Kotis before we deploy it. So this turn I could also Thoughtseize now to try and take away a threat, as opposed to waiting to Thoughtseize the downfall, in the hopes that we can just use Snakeskin Veil instead. So let's see what they're working with. Bitter Triumph we don't really care about. Dark Confidence can be pretty effective at drawing cards. Charming Prince is fine. And then the Cleric is potentially a threat, since with all the life gain, that can close out the game rather quickly. So I probably take the Cleric over Dark Confidence, even though Dark Confidence is good too. And then for now play Signet. Question is if I want to tap out for Ivy. They could take it out with Bitter Triumph, but then they're not necessarily deploying more creatures out, so I think I'm okay if Ivy gets removed, even though we do have some synergy with it, with Aether Tunnel and Audacity. Not as amazing as if we were to copy a mutate creature. Opponent does opt for Dark Confidence over a removal spell, so they get a bunch more triggers. And yeah, all those cards in graveyard are also going to turn into a real threat once Lurrus enters the battlefield, as they can get those all back. But for now, we'll take the hit. Our opponent identifies that the Sanctifier can get in for one as well. Utopia Sprawl is missing a forest to go with it, so that's a little awkward. But yeah, now I can play Kotis, leaving up Snakeskin Veil. And yeah, hopefully they won't find another answer. And then next turn we can start suiting it up with our various enchantments. Alright, pass a turn. Confident reveals... Ooh, Voice of Victory. That's a problem. Prevents us from casting our Snakeskin Veil, although luckily for us they drew a tapped land. Because if they went Voice into Epic Downfall, we would not have been able to counter it with our Snakeskin Veil, but now we can. And then with Ivy we want to target Kotis, so Ivy also picks up an extra +1 counter. Alright, so that worked out. We've got an indestructible Kotis back on defense, no need to copy the downfall. And we can block Amalia. And now Polluted Delta could enable Utopia Sprawl, but I guess we don't really care about it. Just want to start suiting up Kotis with Audacity. Ivy also gets suited up. And then Aether Tunnel to attack past the larger Amalia. We get to dig 6 cards deep now to find additional creatures to help play defense. And we may as well attack with Ivy, since our opponent can otherwise remove it next turn. So get you for 12, and so what do we find? A concession. Alright, I'll take it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Quintorius, Field Historian. So our opponent might have some ways to exile our commanders, so Thoughtseize can take those away. Fatal Push and Edict are fine, although I would have preferred some mana acceleration. So this hand's keepable, but not perfect. Mainly keeping based on the strength of Thoughtseize to take away any irrelevant interaction. And then, for now, I'm happy to just surveil. Can maybe keep Windswept Heath to get basic forest. Want to cast Thoughtseize closer to when we're trying to cast our commander. Scrambling Claws, a good way to enable Quintorius. And let's get the Mortuary. Pact of Negation is not a bad card, but we're a little bit light on mana to cast it. And yeah, we're already gonna Thoughtseize them. We might be lacking ways to enhance Kotis to attack by us blockers. So maybe that's the priority here. Alright, another fetch land, so we'll just play a land and pass. And then next turn I could Swords, or I could just have a look with Thoughtseize, keep up Sheoldred's Edict and Fatal Push. Because we can just play and equip Swords with 5 mana. Opponent's got the Blade Reforged, so now we can fetch and Fatal Push as a pretty clean answer. And get another Surveil land. And donate Sanctum. Alright, Demolisher also a good follow-up to Kotis. So it's time to have a look with Thoughtseize. No way to really interact with our commander. Pyromancer can refresh their hands, so that might be the pick, even though they can still use it out of the graveyard. Sun Titan is pretty good since it can get back all those 3-drops. So maybe Sun Titan's still the better long-term pick. Also with Sword we can attack past all those red cards. And then play Darkslick Shores. Keep up Edict for what it's worth. And there's a Pyromancer. So I'm not in a hurry to Sheoldred's Edict. And I'll tap out for Kotis, hope they didn't draw into an answer. And then next turn we have options between Swords and Demolisher. We're not really using our graveyard, so don't particularly care about what we exile. Visions of Phyrexia resolves. And a Utopia Sprawl we can pretty easily deploy. So with Demolisher we get to hit the hardest. With Sword it's still +2 power, we attack past all the red creatures. So I'm kind of liking Sword and then maybe next turn Demolisher. Even though Demolisher can also blow up their Visions of Phyrexia, for instance. So Utopia Sprawl. Fetch a basic. Play Swords and equip. Hit you for 4, unblockable thanks to protection from red. And what do we get? Can finish off the Pyromancer for now. And Sarah Paragon, alright, I guess it does matter what we leave in the graveyard now. So I'll be getting those fetch lands back. Ooh, Skyclave Apparition, that's the perfect answer to Kotis, sadly. Alright. So, at least I can still redeploy it for 6 mana. So keep the lands. Opponent's gonna exile another land, but there's one left. So we'll start here. Gain 2 life. And then I can redeploy Kotis, keep up Wash Away. And probably just play defense here. Don't think the 3 damage is going to matter too much in the grand scheme of things. If they have a different answer for Kotis, it's nice to have a blocker back. Intervention. Destroy artifact or creature, doesn't exile. So can still go after the swords. Also, I realized we can counter whatever they play from exile, since it's not cast from hand, so it doesn't just counter their commander. So yeah, the Demolisher probably wants to deal with the Visions of Phyrexia soon. Chandra doesn't destroy my commander, but can go after Paragon. Okay, so time for Demolisher. That's 4 mana. Then I can still equip Sword and keep up Wash Away. Edict could also just take care of Chandra, that's maybe better, so we can focus on going face with our commander. Since, yeah, it doesn't trigger if it deals damage to Planeswalkers. So, step 1, I guess never mind, Swords can also finish off Chandra. So yeah, either way, Demolisher on Kotis. Blow up your Visions. Equip, keeping a blue. So now we're looking at the top 8 cards. Go face. They could soak up a little bit of damage here, so we don't get to dig as deep. But Swords is still triggering. And did not find anything useful. Good to know about Mana Tithe. So Reprieve is likely also in their deck. And then I guess we'll keep up both Edict and Wash Away. If they play Quintorius, I don't need to counter it, since we can just Edict it. And I would rather keep Wash Away for a potential answer starting next turn. Alright, looks like our opponent has given up. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, facing Sauron, Grixis control. This is gonna be a tough matchup. We need to find some of our discard spells to try and take away the opponent's interaction, or just have a very explosive opening. So I don't think this really qualifies. Alpha Authority can protect Kotis assuming it resolves, but with this hand that's probably not gonna happen. Alright, this is maybe our best hand so far. Need to ditch Fatal Push, don't expect too many cheap creatures. And then I could use Brainstorm to counteract an opposing discard spell, but then I'm not playing a Llanowar Elves on turn 1. At least with the Sewers I could potentially put a card on top and then surveil it into the graveyard after Brainstorming. But I could also wait on Llanowar Elves, and for now keep a Brainstorm, and then next turn I can Llanowar Elves plus the rest while shuffling. I think I prefer that, since it's not like the Llanowar Elves is casting a 3-drop on turn 2. Alright, Signet, that's gonna resolve. So we'll only shuffle 1 card away, but that's fine. And then Gilded Goose is probably the weakest link. So this turn, fetch Breeding Pool. which I can next turn enchant with Utopia Sprawl. Start with the Duress. And our opponent's got a Dark Ritual. Bolt we don't really care about, since I can potentially not play the Elves. And then Firebrand also can deal with Elves. So yeah, we should just take the Dark Ritual. And then now I can play Utopia Sprawl. So I guess in hindsight, maybe should have duressed before fetching, and then I could have played a tapped Sewers if I really wanted to. So now we need to draw an untapped land to play Kotis. And we did. And yeah, these removal spells don't really line up. Our opponent's close to casting Sauron, but we can fly over it as we redraw the Goose. So let's mutate. Can maybe surveil first, but I'm fine drawing and then surveilling. Kotis also no longer legendary now, for what it's worth. And Alpha Authority is additional protection. Now a lot of the cards we'll find are going to be counter spells and removal, which may not be at their best, as we see here. And don't need Swamp. So again, if we want to target Sauron, we have to sacrifice a legendary artifact or a legendary creature, which we currently can't do. So yeah, let's start by attacking. We're a bit short on ways to enhance our commander, so we're only looking at the top 3. And we find Counterspell, Goldspan, so another swing and a miss. Okay, play Authority on the off chance that they can remove my commander otherwise. Probably could have tapped a little bit better to leave myself with more green mana to cast the Letter Elves. Because yeah, we had green on Utopia Sprawl. So whenever an army deals damage, Ring tempts them, they can discard their hand, draw 4. They're just going to clear the Goose. That happens. Does our opponent discard, draw 4? They do. Yeah, so they can find all sorts of interaction here, as we've seen from the exiled cards. Nicol Bolas will make me discard. So I guess in response I'll just discard myself, deal with Nicol Bolas. So we at least clear a path for the Dreamtail. So yeah, it would be nice if we can top deck a nice equipment here. But just inherently this seems like a tough matchup, because most of the cards we'll find don't matter. And then we still have to outrace Sauron and all his armies, which is a lot to ask. And yeah, that's not the draw we needed. Can gain 3 with our food. Maybe that keeps us alive. And once again, a bunch of 4 mana cards that I'm a little bit short of casting. So, yeah, pass it back. Can have a look at all the exiled cards, as Liliana also makes us sacrifice our only creature here, if they want to. So yeah, if we got our commander up to 5 or 6 power, maybe we had a chance, but as it stands, our opponent can easily minus Liliana to deal with all creatures, and then they're still very far ahead. They're happy with their hand. And wow, they even had a Shieldred's Edict as another clean solution for our commanders, so they don't even have to minus Liliana. And yeah, this game is super over. So the Alpha Authority and the Indestructible just didn't matter against all the Edict effects, which is to be expected. Now Inquisition's a little late to the party. Can replay Kotis and Inquisition. But we should just be dead on board here. Alright. Can't win them all. GG's. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the play, facing the mirror match once again, and we've got a promising hand, I would say. Now the question is, do we pitch Trophy Mage to Chromox? Could be worth it just to play Kotis on turn 2 already. Yeah, that's gonna be worth it, even though we'll lack maybe the late game equipment to search up. So then, yeah, this will eventually need to get black mana. Chromox pitch Trophy Mage. Play Bloom Tender. Next turn, get a Watery Grave, cast Kotis. Never mind, a Natural State destroys Chromox. Alright, that's a setback. So then now we can still play the Blade and Surveil end of turn. Starix is a way to grow Kotis, but it doesn't give Trample. So our opponent can just block with their commander. Kami also gets in the way, so that's pretty good in this matchup. So yeah, need to find a way to make our commander unblockable or give it trample. And that's assuming it resolves. Opponent could have a wash away. They do not. Now Bloom Tender does make 3 mana, so that's good. But our opponent's got quite a few more cards in hand. Still no trample, so mutate Starix. See what we get. Overgrown Tomb. Alright. I guess I should have equipped the blade first before mutating. But no point in attacking. So we're gonna have a bit of a stalemate. Opponent's got an Inquiry. And a bypass, so they do get to attack. Finding Signets and a wash away. And Inquiry makes a clue token. So our opponent's off to the races. Shieldred's Edict, wow. So opponent's gonna chump, losing Kami, and then Edict cleanly takes care of Kotis. That was a lucky top deck. Do it now. A non-token creature. I mean, I guess I could let them untap. There's a chance they put more stuff on Kotis, but that seems risky to me. Since they could also draw into a counterspell. And then I may as well equip now. Okay. Our opponent can easily redeploy Kotis, so it's not like we get to pull ahead. But at least we're not falling behind. We get to Surveil end of turn. So anything giving flying, trample, or protection could also be relevant. Tome of Gadwick, what does that do specifically? When the creature attacks, they get to conjure a bunch of cantrips. Alright, pretty good, although they probably wouldn't be attacking into my Starix. Although now with Aether Tunnel, it's unblockable. And their opponent's likely to find some cards that can chump my Starix, so this is not good. What can I do here? I can Surveil to make their odds of hitting something powerful less likely, but I probably keep it to find something useful myself. So can block. And our opponent found Pact Weapon and Ladder Elves. Yeah, Pact Weapon we need to find an answer to, otherwise we can't win the game. Although we do have a couple ways to remove artifacts. End of turn we'll Surveil. And definitely don't need more lanes. Dirge Bats, alright, that's a good one. Mutate onto Starix. Blow up Ladder Elves. Opponent's gonna draw a response. This is a spell they found of the tome. Find 2 more permanents. Color for lifelink. May as well. Alright, we get to look at the top 8 here. Finding Gem Razor, Unable to Scream. Yeah, those are all pretty good. Now their commander does have Ward 1. So I guess I wouldn't be able to pay for the Unable to Scream. That's a tragedy. Yeah, so maybe should have kept mana untapped for that eventuality. Also can't mutate with the Gem Razor, sadly. So is there any point in casting this? Yeah, I guess not. But well, opponent concedes. Maybe they didn't see that they had Ward. And then we still needed to eventually find an answer to Pact Weapon. But yeah, sooner or later we'll find another mutate creature and then Gem Razor can deal with it. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play facing Ygra, Eater of All. And yeah, that could be a tough matchup if our opponent pulls off some of their combos. But we've got a keepable hand to start out. Turn 2 Explore, play Boots. Turn 3 Kotis, hopefully. And then Starix can enhance it. Sword, not super relevant in this matchup. Found the land. Alright, so we've got Kotis lined up. So unless our opponent's got their own Edict effect to answer it, we should be safe. Deep Cavern Bat has a look. Going for either Starix or Sword. Nope, goes for Edict. I guess that's just a clean answer for the bat. Ooh, Chromox, that's exciting. So I can give up Starix in order to attack with Kotis right now. And it would have 3 power. Yeah, I think that's worth it. Plus it will also have an extra layer of protection with Ward 1. Opponent seems to have a free spell in hand. Force of Vigor, ouch. Well, that's an absolute blowout. At least they didn't blow up my sword, but still. So no attack this turn. Now we just have a 2-1 Kotis, hoping to draw an untapped plane to equip sword, maybe. And Bat is attacking, so they're not intending to chump. Or they have another answer. Well, I guess we'll start by attacking and see what happens. We get to connect. And don't find anything useful. So Bloom Tender might get destroyed, so I think I should just sword. Even though Bloom Tender can give us the mana to next turn sword equip, if it gets removed it's no help to us. Fate from History blows up our sword. Also combo with Ygra. Normally turns it into destroy all your opponent's creatures, but this time Kotis is indestructible. And Aether Spark was a nice pickup. So we're still in the game. Get to look at the top 3 cards. And Toxic Deluge, yes please. Can get our Edict back. And Edict also a very clean answer for Ygra. Alright, and that'll do it. Awesome. So we get to see Kotis in action, and yeah, it doesn't take many attacks for most opponents to throw in the towel, since a lot of players hate it when the opponent can exile their spells and start casting them. So understandably, most opponents don't stick around for all those effects to happen. But yeah, the deck is very powerful, so outside of maybe counter spells and wide removal spells that can exile, there's not too many answers out there for Kotis, so then once in play, it's not too difficult to run away with the game. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.